Have you ever felt as though you're spiraling into darkness, only to discover that the shadows are not signs of collapse, but doorways to an undiscovered self? In the pages of the Red Book, Carl Gustav Jung confronted the turbulent landscape of his own psyche, descending into visions and dialogues that would lay the groundwork for modern depth psychology. What he found there was not a pathological abyss, but an alchemical forge in which the soul is tested, transformed, and ultimately awakened. Far from labeling his inner turmoil as mere depression, Jung recognized these dark nights of the soul as essential passages, ritual initiations into a richer, more vital state of being. When we read Jung's private revelations, we glimpse a man willing to embrace his own demons, wolves that howl at the edge of consciousness, serpents that coil around dormant potentials, and shadowy figures that reflect our deepest unacknowledged desires. Yet his encounters were never ends in themselves, but thresholds of change. He journeyed through suffering so that he might emerge on the other side with a more integrated self, one in which light and dark, masculine and feminine, reason and instinct converse in creative harmony. This alchemical vision stands in stark contrast to contemporary models that treat low mood primarily as a chemical imbalance or a malfunctioning neurotransmitter. While neurobiology offers invaluable insights, it can also relegate our most profound existential experiences to mere pathology. Jung's Red Book reminds us that what we often pathologize as depression may actually be a calling, a summons to explore the hidden realms of our psyche, to wrestle with the dragon of disowned material, and to discover the buried gold of nascent potentials. At the heart of Jung's approach lies the concept of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who we truly are. Individuation requires that we acknowledge and integrate the shadow, that cluster of instincts, fears, and desires banished from conscious life because they didn't fit social expectations or personal ideals. In the Red Book, Jung dramatizes this encounter not as a clinical case study, but as an epic spiritual drama, complete with mythic symbols, archetypal figures, and transformative dialogues. When depression knocks at the door, it may be the shadow requesting admission, a signal that some part of ourselves has been neglected, repressed, or misunderstood. To awaken through depression, Jung invites us to cultivate active imagination, a method of dialogue with inner figures that brings unconscious contents into living relationship with the ego. Rather than suppressing distressing images, we give them voice on the canvas of imagination, through writing, painting, or guided fantasy, allowing them to reveal their messages. A hostile figure might represent an angry child within. A crumbling temple may point to a belief system overdue for renovation. By engaging in this creative conversation, we transform suffering into insight and loneliness into companionship. Another key practice drawn from the Red Book is the disciplined work of contemplation. Jung often sat for hours before a blank page, waiting patiently for images to arise, then recording them in flowing script and vivid color. This patience models an attitude of reverent attention to inner life, an opposite stance to the hurried rush toward quick fixes or symptom eradication. In the silence of contemplative immersion, depression loses its terror. It no longer seems like an enemy to be vanquished, but a guide inviting us to slow down, listen deeply, and discover what the psyche is longing to express. Jung also underscored the importance of myth and symbol as universal carriers of psychic energy. In the Red Book, he revisits ancient stories of descent to the underworld, of martyrdom and resurrection, recognizing in them resonant patterns that echo in our personal struggles. When we feel hopeless, we can turn to these myths as roadmaps: the hero who ventures into darkness, the bride who descends to reclaim her beloved, the phoenix that perishes only to rise anew. These narratives remind us that our suffering is not isolated, but part of a greater tapestry of transformation that has been woven by countless seekers before us. Moreover, Jung's portraits of the anima and animus, the inner feminine in men and the inner masculine in women, highlight how psychic imbalance fuels depression. A man who has ignored his anima may experience melancholy rooted in a loss of soulfulness. A woman who has denied her animus might feel disempowered and hollow. The Red Book's imagery of male figures merging with female companions, of androgynous beings emerging from the depths, offers a corrective vision. Only by embracing both poles can we achieve psychic wholeness and alchemize our despair into creative vitality. Jung was also painfully aware of the cultural dimensions of depression. He saw that modern society's overemphasis on rationality, utility, and external success often starves the soul of meaning. In the Red Book, he rails against the civic serpent of materialism that coiled around the collective mind, choking off access to myth, ritual, and the sacrificial mysteries that give life depth. Depression, from this perspective, may be the soul's protest against a flattened world. When we lose touch with rites of passage, rites that once marked birth, puberty, marriage, and death, we lack the scaffolding needed to navigate life's crises. Jung's remedy: forge personal rituals, reconnect with nature's cycles, and honor the sacred through art, music, and community gatherings. Importantly, the Red Book also acknowledges that the awakening process can be lonely and disorienting. Jung describes moments when his psyche seemed a fracturing kaleidoscope, each shard reflecting a different persona or archetype. Such multiplicity can feel like fragmentation until we learn to host all parts of ourselves with compassion. Depression, then, may be the initial breaking apart that precedes reintegration. By offering kind attention to each internal voice, whether terrified child, scolding parent, or curious trickster, we gradually weave disparate threads into a coherent tapestry. Jung's own integration was not a solitary triumph, but a collaborative venture with fellow explorers. He corresponded with artists, poets, and spiritual seekers, sharing visions and interpretations. The Red Book emerged as a communal project in microcosm. Jung listened to his inner figures, then shared their messages through poems and paintings, and finally through dialogues with colleagues like Tony Wolff and Emma Jung. This communal dimension suggests that awakening from depression is not only a personal journey, but a collective gift. By articulating our insights and struggles, we contribute to the wider fabric of human healing. In practical terms, what does it look like to live the Red Book's teachings today? First, commit to regular periods of reflective solitude, daily or weekly, during which you journal dreams, fantasies, or emotional highs and lows without censoring yourself. Second, cultivate a creative practice, drawing, painting mandalas, composing poems that gives form to the formless stirrings within. Third, seek out symbolic experiences. Watch a myth-based film, attend a ritual ceremony, or read poetry that resonates with your current state. Fourth, build a circle of trusted confidants, friends, therapists, or peer groups who respect the mystery of inner work and can hold your emerging insights with curiosity rather than fear. As you embark on these practices, remind yourself that depression is not a dead end, but an open portal. Each pang of sadness, each wave of doubt, each whisper of fear heralds the arrival of something new. Jung likened this emergence to the birth of a new self, crude at first, wriggling in the dark, but destined to mature into a more authentic, vital expression of your unique purpose. By honoring the lessons of the Red Book, you transform your suffering into a hero's journey, one that leads not away from the world, but deeper into the rich soil of shared humanity. Jung's Red Book does not end with a tidy resolution, for the process of awakening is neither linear nor finite. Instead, it unfolds as a series of spirals, each descent into darkness yielding new images, each emergence into light revealing previously unseen shadows. To follow Jung's path, we must learn to dwell in ambiguity, to welcome paradox, and to trust that the psyche's own wisdom guides us toward wholeness. One of the most striking episodes in the Red Book describes Jung's encounter with Philemon, an old man with a mocking smile and a walking stick tipped with a serpent's head. Philemon challenges Jung's preconceptions, insisting that the psyche is not his possession, but a living reality with its own autonomy. To work with this, Jung advises us to practice listening sessions. Designate a safe space and time each week to dialogue with your inner figures. Speak aloud what arises, whether it feels absurd, frightening, or wondrous, and record the exchange verbatim. Over time, you'll notice recurring themes. Perhaps a protective mentor figure who offers guidance, or a chaotic trickster who disrupts your routines. Recognizing these patterns helps you discern which parts of yourself require integration and which call for gentle boundary setting. In another vision, Jung witnesses a cathedral of labyrinthine corridors whose walls weep with blood. This harrowing image, rather than heralding doom, serves as a symbolic map of the dark passageways of the collective unconscious. To map your own inner labyrinth, create a visual journal. Sketch or collage the landscapes of your dreams and active imagination sessions. Don't worry about artistic skill. What matters is capturing the essence of each scene. Label the zones that feel ominous, the figures that appear repeatedly, and the exits where you find relief or insight. This living cartography becomes a reference guide for future explorations, reminding you of territories already traversed and those you've yet to face. The Red Book also emphasizes the transformative power of ritual. Jung records elaborate ceremonies in which he anoints symbols with oil, traces circles of power on the ground, and intones invocations to archetypal figures. While you need not replicate these exact rites, you can design your own rites of passage. For example, to mark the end of a depressive episode, you might gather a few tokens: stones, shells, candles, each representing a facet of your struggle. At sunset, place them in a shallow bowl of water and let them drift away, symbolizing release. Then, light a fresh candle to inaugurate the dawning of renewed purpose. Such rituals externalize internal transitions, giving emotional and symbolic shape to otherwise nebulous shifts. Jung's commentary on the image of the crater, the ancient mixing bowl, offers another potent metaphor. In Greek myth, Demeter pours nectar into a crater to revive the earth. Jung sees the crater as the psyche's receptacle, where conscious intention and unconscious material blend to yield new life. To evoke your personal crater, try a fusion practice. Choose a theme you're wrestling with, fear of failure, for instance, and collect 10 images, words, or brief quotes that feel related. Arrange them around a central symbol, perhaps a drawing of a bowl or chalice, and meditate on how each element interacts with the others. Notice tensions, harmonies, and unexpected resonances. This process often uncovers hidden insights, as disparate pieces coalesce into a coherent symbolic message. Jung also underscores the importance of attuning to nature as a mirror of the psyche. In one passage, he describes a solitary fir tree whose needles persist through winter storms, a beacon of resilience amid desolation. To practice this, spend unstructured time outdoors, ideally in a spot that feels personally meaningful. Instead of ruminating, direct your attention to the textures, sounds, and rhythms around you. Afterward, journal your experience, focusing on any parallels to your inner state. Do you feel like the storm-battered tree, clinging despite adversity? Or like the winter-bare forest floor awaiting the first stirrings of spring? Such ecological mindfulness bridges the gap between outer and inner worlds, reminding you that cycles of death and renewal are universal. On the interpersonal level, Jung's work invites us to cultivate shadow allies within trusted relationships. Rather than hiding your depressive thoughts, share select dream images or active imagination narratives with a confidant who is willing to listen without judgment. Frame them as symbols rather than confessions. I had a vision of a winged lion last night. What do you think it might represent? This collaborative exploration not only validates your experiences, but also enlists fresh perspectives, revealing angles you may have overlooked. Over time, these conversations weave a community of witnesses, each contributing to the collective tapestry of meaning. Jung was also attuned to the somatic dimension of awakening. He noted that certain images in the Red Book manifested as physical sensations: tightness in the chest, a tremor in the hands, a sudden release of tears. To honor this mind-body dialogue, develop a simple movement practice tied to your inner work. For instance, after journaling a troubling dream, stand and allow your body to respond organically. Stretch where it feels constricted, sway where it wants to loosen, and breathe into areas of tension. This embodied processing helps ground intense emotions and integrates insights at a visceral level, preventing soul-searching from becoming purely cerebral. It is crucial, too, to recognize that not all inner figures are benevolent guides. Jung describes encounters with malevolent entities, dark Anunnaki-like figures that threaten to overwhelm him. When you encounter similar disturbing images, resist the urge to suppress or flee. Instead, approach them with clear boundaries. Visualize a protective circle of light. Invite a benevolent inner ally to accompany you, or set the conscious intention that this image may speak, but it cannot harm me. With consistent practice, these shadow figures often transform, revealing underlying fears, traumas, or moral dilemmas that have been crying out for attention. Finally, Jung's Red Book teaches us to cultivate patience, not as passive waiting, but as alert receptivity. Awakening unfolds in its own time, often through seemingly random triggers: a chance conversation, a haunting melody, a glimpse of sunlight through a rain-streaked window. Keep a synchronicity log to record moments when outer events align uncannily with your inner state. Over weeks and months, patterns emerge, guiding you toward themes that warrant deeper exploration. By honoring these synchronistic cues, you align yourself with the psyche's innate intelligence, allowing it to orchestrate your awakening in a co-creative dance rather than a frantic scramble for answers.